All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all is well and everyone is flourishing on this beautiful day. My name is Tara Marshall, and I will be guiding everyone with us through a conversation where we'll be discussing bringing humanity back into hospitality. I have with me today a group of amazing panelists who will be contributing to the conversation on empathy and emotional intelligence, what it is to be self-aware, socially aware, and how we can be better to ourselves and the people around us in a work and social environment. More than most have had that moment where they have felt as though their mental, physical, or emotional health has been compromised or ignored, whether it be themselves doing it or others. We are here today to talk through what that looks like and how we can improve skills on relationship management, conflict resolution, and more. I would like to take a second to thank Bacardi, Tales of the Cocktail, and Focus on Health for making this panel possible today. To start off, I would like to introduce myself. I am Bacardi's Multicultural Brand Portfolio Ambassador for DC. Originally from Louisville, Kentucky, I have over 12 years experience in the industry, ranging from being on the floor, behind the bar, managing bars and events, as well as everything in between, primarily in Atlanta and the DC areas. And I currently reside in DC now. I would like to go down the line, panelists, if we could just go down the line and briefly introduce yourselves.
Hello, how you doing? My name's Dwight Juice Jones, founder of Get Home Safe, located in DC. We've done a little bit under 25 events between DC, Philly, and New York. And we've got about 150 folks registered for therapy from 2019 to present.
Hey everyone, my name is Jessica. I'm super excited to be here. I am currently a doctoral candidate residing in Columbia, South Carolina, with 10 plus years in the bar industry and about 5 years providing therapy and psychological education.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason. I am actually today representing London. Woo! I am a bartender at the Nomad in London, and have more than 10 years experience in that trade, in hospitality in general, going through various positions and different outlets, from restaurant to bar, from bar back to bar manager, etc. And next to that, I'm also a certified nutritionist.
Cool. Well, welcome everybody. Super excited. Dwight, I wanted to start with you and ask you, as someone who advocates for therapy amongst people in the industry and beyond, what is the general standpoint on therapy?
The general standpoint on therapy has changed quite a bit over the years. So as the manager of Velvet Lounge from about 2012, the end of 2012 to present, there were so many stories and so many people who reached out to me. Like, I gave a lot of hugs and I was known for embracing quite a lot of folks on that block. And it went from hugs to conversations and conversations to questions and questions to me realizing I didn't have the best solutions for a lot of people who were talking to me after they had vented. So when we started Get Home Safe, one of the functions of Get Home Safe was we bring therapists to the function, because I wanted to normalize folks being able to have access to therapy and seeing what a therapist looks like. And sometimes you need representation of, there's a person who looks like me and talks like me who's in this sector of the world or work that I've been interested in. and if they'd either be able to help me out or can I have that resource. So at first, people were very hesitant on therapy. The exposure of going through the process and sitting down not only with themselves, but with a little bit of their past, which isn't usually easy for anyone, and really figuring out, A, is this something that I can afford? And B, is this something that I need for myself? So that number 150 is important because that lets me know that after I had conversations with folks and they saw the events that we put together, that people really sat down with themselves and figured out maybe this is something I can explore and I do deserve to give myself a chance.
Cool. So, I mean, in terms of like destigmatizing therapy with a lot of people who have kind of that negative or just feel like it's not approachable, like what was like the best method for you? Was it kind of just bringing the therapist to the party?
It was bringing therapists to the party was a great mechanism in terms of seeing the therapist get drinks with folks and be in the actual party vibe of what was going on. But what I had noticed was in the first couple of events I had put together, people were actually lining up to talk to therapists, and the things they were saying off the bat let me know, A, they were ready to talk to a stranger, but B, there was a lack of awareness on, well, what am I allowed to share with this person who's a stranger publicly? Because when you meet a therapist in a bar, that's not you behind a closed door, just between you and them. There's not privacy. But a lot of people were so willing to either be first in line or have that experience, and they were leaving. And then I would either get DMs of, hey, how can I reach back out to that person? Or B, was I supposed to say that or not say that? And then I realized I had to start creating boundaries for folks saying, hey, when you talk to the therapist, it's about inquiry for therapy, because the work that starts is supposed to be behind closed doors between you and that person. And whatever happens in that conversation stays between you and that person. And that's the benefit, because a lot of us, we grow up thinking we're supposed to talk to our parents to get the answers, or cousins and friends. And these are people who we've not only been conditioned to talk to, but they've been through it with us. They've been through some things and they know what we've experienced. So we would think that them being there through their lens and my lens, we can meet in the middle and they may have the best answer. But sometimes you do need an outside source and an outside perspective that's not thinking about what you've been through, but thinking about what you as a person actually need and helping you sort through what you may need to let go in the present or the future.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And I wanted to ask Jessica, like in your line of work, being as though you are somebody who currently talks to people, I wanted to ask, like, what is the importance of active communication?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so funny that you say that, Dwight, because I just had I was at a party and someone start disclosing some very serious trauma to me. And I was like, no, boundaries. We need boundaries right now. Because I had been drinking myself and I was like, but I think that's such a testament to like that people are ready to do the work and we need to have those spaces to create for them, right? But in terms of like active communication, our brains are so complex. They're so amazing in the way that they can interact with so many different stimuli all at once. And I think that's super powerful. But as adults, especially like in this industry, we have to be able to kind of parse through some of those thoughts a little bit better for ourselves and for the people around us too. So like when something is emotionally triggering for us, a lot of us don't realize that that's happening until we've already experienced the emotion, had the thought, and now we're acting upon it. And then we're like, oh, wait, now I've just like created more chaos than actually like sat with myself. So I think in terms of active communication, there's a couple really important pieces to that. The first being like active communication with yourself. So like, what does it feel like for you when you feel angry, when you feel frustrated? Like knowing those things about yourself is so empowering and so powerful for you and those around you. Because if I go through life feeling frustrated and having no idea what that feels like for me, I'm already reacting to other people without really thinking about myself first. So I think step one is always having that active communication with yourself. Step two being like knowing what you need when you feel those overwhelming emotions. So when you feel like that extreme emotion of anger, that extreme frustration, like what kind of person are you? Do you need to go take a walk? Do you need to go scream curse words really loud in the walk-in? Like, what do you need to kind of sit with yourself? Because if you can't have active communication with yourself, how is your brain going to process communicating with someone else, right? That's like unfair for you to force yourself to do that when you're still feeling those overwhelm of emotions. And then I think the third part, which is essentially what you're asking, is how do we communicate with other people? And that's, I think that really comes down to thinking about what we are asking in that moment. So for example, a lot of times, I mean, like a fundamental principle of psychology is like people want to be heard, seen, and loved, cared for. Like we all know that, right? Like, and it's so easy to allow someone else to not feel heard or seen or cared for. So, but we can't, when we're talking to someone else and asking for when we're trying to assert communication effectively, we can't be like, you don't see me, I need you to see me. We have to have like much more tangible asks, because the person, your manager or your guest or whoever you're trying to communicate with, your peer, isn't really going to understand what that means. So I think really like pausing and sitting down and thinking, what do I need in this exact moment to actually feel what those underlying principles that I'm searching for a little bit deeper are. So if you if you're communicating, say you're behind the bar and it's really stressful and you don't feel like your peer is really providing the support you need, instead of freaking out and getting frustrated, like pausing and thinking like, what is a direct ask I can ask of them that would allow me to feel a little bit more heard, seen, and cared for in those moments? And so a lot of times that looks like, and I know this is a luxury to be able to, like, in a busy shift, actually communicate all of these needs in one sentence, but like to be like, I feel X when Y happens, and I need whatever that direct ask is. But making sure it's like tangible and direct, I think, is really helpful, because that ambiguity can be so confusing to so many people. Sorry, that was very long-winded.
Okay. No, that's super helpful. Wait, oh, okay. It like froze for a second. Okay. All right, so that's super helpful. And like, I also wanted to kind of ask, you specialize in like coercion and manipulation, right? Like in terms of kind of those like microaggressions. And could you kind of go into detail a little bit and like let people know a little bit about like what that means and like what that looks like?
Yeah, that's a really, really tough one to kind of like conceptualize, because I think especially in this industry, we all kind of understand what coercion looks like or what manipulation looks like, but to put like an actual definition on it can be so hard. Examples I love to give are like, we've all had that one really skeezy manager that like manipulates the schedule based on getting what he wants, right? Like we know that happens. Or that one guest who's like, if you flirt just a little bit more with them, they're going to give you a little bit bigger tip. That is coercion and that's manipulation. And I think that a lot of times it's hard because like the threat isn't very like, we don't see it as like super severe. So we're like, oh, it's fine. Like I can smile and spend a little bit more time with that guest for a little bit extra money. But over long periods of time, that guest will keep coming back and keep expecting more. And I think that's where we tend to run into a lot of these bigger problems. And then after a year of the same creepy guest coming in, now we're running into really big problems because they're harassing you, right? And now you're like, this person won't leave me alone. It started out as no big deal and now it's a big deal. And so I think drawing some attention to like what those little kind of things are that are happening that we all know those moments where we're like, that was a little uncomfortable, but I can't really pinpoint it. I can't make a complaint to my boss because there was nothing like tangible to hold on to. right? And that's when things get really tricky, I think, especially in the hospitality industry, because so much of that is like, I just kind of felt uncomfortable, but it's not like they didn't touch me or they didn't, do an actual behavior. But I think step one is always like that awareness piece and really trusting our gut to identify those moments. At least when they happen, when that moment's like, something didn't feel right, like just note that. Like we always call them like data points. Like you want to collect those data points so that you can be like, this isn't right. Something's not right here. Because because exactly like what you're saying, it can happen slowly over time and then it comes too late and then it's a really big, scary issue for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. And also, I think it's just, really important that I feel like a lot of people feel those feelings that you are like bringing up. So, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew what that is and what that looks like for sure. Jason, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you, Tara, for having us.
Good. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, what does humanity mean to you personally and in relation to hospitality?
For me personally, I think there is no hospitality without humanity. I think we can all agree. Hospitality shouldn't be about you giving the perfect experience. Meanwhile, you suffer any poor conditions. It should be a no-go. But it still happens. It happens way too much, unfortunately. Hospitality starts with taking care of yourself first. Otherwise, you can't provide hospitality. Taking care of yourself doesn't work if you spend the most of your time in a place where you don't get the right support for your needs. Think of if you work, 8, 9, 10 and more hours a day, that's pretty much where you spend all your life, don't you? You might just go home, sleep, and spend a few hours for yourself. So being at work is a major part of your life. So you need to be get looked after. So the hospitality business is a people business, and truly it's all about the genuine customer experience and the people that give it. So ultimately, the condition of your staff is what will define the quality and the guest experience they deliver. And I hope you all agree with that as well. I personally do believe in a relevant culture and great training program for every successful business, but people's needs need to come first. Otherwise, it's just not and will never become a sustainable business and industry. So we really have to think about that. It's not looking at one issue, it's really looking at the bigger picture. Sustainability, if you take the term as a whole, the definition of sustainability is really the ability of something to maintain or sustain itself over time. And that really goes into the staffing, into the staff. If you don't take care of your staff, at some point you will run out of your stuff, or maybe you will always have stuff, but you will definitely run out of your good stuff. So a term which can be directly translated into the staffing situation, or you can also call it staffing issue, specifically here at the UK at the minute. If you look at it, the UK, or let's say not UK, but let's say London specifically, has always been, of course, a capital of hospitality and restaurants and bars, specifically in Europe. I'll take it from a European perspective. But the big issue at the same time, it is so on top of the list, but at the same time, it is so poor in sense of the capability to provide care to the hospitality workers. So it's awesome to work in London. It's good for your paper. It's good for your experience. It's good for whatever you can take back into your whole experience. But many people do suffer, obviously, meanwhile they work here as well, and that's unfortunately the reality. Now, adding Brexit on top of that, and adding the post-COVID mindset as well, all of that really has shifted into kind of a crisis Now, businesses do struggle to source stuff, specifically good stuff. Sourcing is one thing, but specifically retaining them is obviously the other cost or the other issue. And businesses don't really realize that the fundamental part is to change the approach towards the stuff, which means taking care of the stuff. I think that's the thing that we have to mention. Now, during the pandemic, when hospitality businesses couldn't trade because of lockdowns, etc., most of them still had to pay rent. So owners and managers became incredibly creative, or they will go bankruptcy. So obviously there was kind of like no choice. And this creativity is now required from them to make the changes we need for the future of our trade. Now, looking forward, the trend globally is going towards better health and more life balance, which is completely fair. And it's a bit sad that we had to wait for a pandemic to realize the reality, but that's how it is at the moment. Now, if some businesses don't start to change, it might hit them sooner or later. Now, for me, going back to your question, humanity is about empathy and understanding human needs first. That's one part. But the most important part in that is actively making changes for the sake of your people, of your staff.
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are back in.
There we go. No, I think, yes, I fully agree. And a lot of those issues aren't issues that I think resonate, and not just in the London and UK, but for sure, like all over the world. And I also wanted to ask, while you've been in this position to help and develop others, like, has that helped your mental health as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm happier than ever. I have to say, I'm happier than ever. I'm healthier than ever. And that's thankfully through the pandemic. I do respect, and I'm also sorry for every single person who had struggles throughout the pandemic. And I wished I could send some energy towards their way. And I was one of these people as well. I was struggling specifically, not the first month. The first month I've eaten, and I had so much joy because I felt it was just a holiday. But out of 1 month it became quite a longer period. And then you start to, obviously you are locked up, and then you start to realize that you are confronting some issues. So at some point, out of an incredibly good place, I was in a very bad shape and bad place as well, because I was kind of like locked up. That's just one of the things. Now, what I've realized during these times is that I got massively support from people around me, and I think that's incredibly important. So the lesson out of that, which I've learned, is always surround yourself by awesome people, because these are the people that, when you have a low, they're gonna help you out. If you don't have the great people around you, they won't help you out when you have a low. They might just walk away. So your surrounding is incredibly important. Now, these people help me to really boost me up, and of course, it was also a big portion of me looking into myself and really seeing issues, but then also taking a moment to not only reflect, but also making changes, and just to become a better person. So that's what the pandemic really taught me. Now, people help me, and I think if I do have that energy and love, I definitely should help people as well, and that makes me even more happy. So it does definitely affect my mental health in so many ways, and I am not ready to stop with that. And for me, I just feel it's just the beginning, and I think I don't expect anyone to help anyone around them. That's all your own choice. And when I help people, I don't expect anything in return. But as long I can make a little change, as long this call today with all of you incredible people will change the life of one single person, we achieved something. And it's all about that. It's all about the little single steps that we take every single day. First of all, towards ourselves first, and then naturally it will support people around us, because we inspire people. People get inspired by people, And if I can be an inspiration somewhere, and as you all in this room are inspirations for me today, we are doing the right thing.
Absolutely. What about you, Juice? Does helping others help with your mental health as well?
Juice, you mute.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. In a sense, it does help with my mental health in terms of helping others. But there's one thing, though, that I did want to add on to Jason's point when it came to empathy, which is really important. Empathy isn't the same across the board in terms of how people allow themselves to be empathetic and what they feel, especially when it comes to our industry, because we are used to taking on more shifts that we need, or certain establishments just needing you to come to work to cover for other people. And due to that, I think it affects not only our own self-care, but it also affects how we treat others within the industry because of the system and how it's built. And then another thing that's important when it comes to empathy is our love languages. So when people think about their love languages, they only think about relationships that they're in when it comes to dating, but love languages really go across the board for how you treat people, what gifts look like, how you would like to be appreciated, which is something that I think establishments should look into when it comes to their employees and how they would like to be shown appreciation if possible. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you, completely right.
But onto your question that you asked, I could definitely see how the organization that I've created and the work that we've done does help with my mental health. But it also puts into perspective, how could you allow yourself to give so much to so many people and not give it to yourself? Which is very important, because when it comes to therapy, I'm just going to touch on the number 150 one more time. That number was a choice that people made because of the work that we did, but it wasn't a forced number. Like when we did the events, we weren't telling you, you have to get therapy. We were telling you there are other options, and here what these options look like. Are they a good fit for you? And if they're not a good fit for you, here's Google. And if Google doesn't work, we may have some resources on our website you can reach out to if you want to do something directly, like with a school, with an establishment, if you have Medicaid, if you have insurance, and going down the list for a lot of folks. So the work that I've done has made a difference in the temperature of my mental health. But me as a helper and me as someone who's about the community, I do have to make sure to put myself first, whether it be taking breaks, whether it be stepping away from content creation altogether for 2 weeks to just sit with myself and ask myself, Dwight, are you okay? And if you are okay, are you happy? Because life isn't supposed to just be about being okay. It's also supposed to be about, is there joy in your life? And are you doing things that serve you outside of just being helpful within the community?
Oh yeah, I 100% agree with that one. I mean, because if you think about it, you know, we're all on go mode all the time. So it's really hard sometimes to just take a step back, take a pause, and ask yourself those things. Because, you know, even on a personal level, I've gotten to that point where it's like, wait a minute, let me take a step back and like, let me take a rest for a minute, whether that be for the day, for an hour, or for a week, you know. So important. I wanted to ask the group, we'll just do like a few general questions, but in the workspace, and actually to the point that we were just talking about, a lot of adults don't recognize when they are having an emotional moment. And I wanted to ask, like, what is it like to have an emotional moment? And what are some telltale signs that people should be aware of when they're going through one?
Okay, I'll go first. An example of an emotional moment. Let's let's peel that back a little bit. So the way men in America in general are brought up, we're not brought up to be in touch with our feelings. So within the last decade or so, a lot of that has changed. Examples of that changing, funny enough, would be the Crown Act, because coming out of the pandemic, we've seen a lot more men be willing to grow their hair, groom their hair, and see what that experience is like. And also be more in touch with yourself, because the pandemic, one of the effects of the pandemic was people had to be with themselves and not be distracted. So even if there were Netflix, Hulu, HBO, alcohol, after a while, those things would run out and you really had to either have conversations with yourself or reach out to someone. So an example of an emotional moment can be anger. Now, anger is very easy because most of us have an idea of what anger looks like, but sadness, and sometimes sadness isn't something that's straightforward, like you're sad to the point that there's tears. Sadness has levels. So it might be I'm too tired today to take out the garbage and I don't know what's wrong with me, but maybe it's just the garbage and I don't feel like taking it out. Sometimes sadness can be an example of the conversation I have with my manager is the same conversation I've had 2 weeks ago, but there's something about this particular conversation that doesn't sit right with me. And really walking yourself through why you're having that emotion or the cause behind it. So emotional outbursts is, as much as it's not a very straightforward thing, there are ways to recognize that. So what I usually do is, if I have a sadness moment or an emotional moment, I ask myself, what has changed between this week compared to the week before? And is that change the reason I feel this way? Or is there something much deeper that I've been ignoring? And is that leading up to whether I'm having an emotional outburst outwardly, or am I having an outburst inwardly and I'm shutting down due to that?
Mm.
Yeah.
What about Jessica or Jason? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, Dwight, in terms of like noticing differences, right? I think something that is unique to our industry is that we're constantly in that like high highs, low lows. Like we work a really busy shift. We like are rushed with adrenaline. We go home, we crash, we sleep in arguably most of the time, probably too late, wake up and do it all again. We're like on this roller coaster. And sometimes when we get those like couple days off and we're jumping off that roller coaster, our bodies are trying to communicate something to us and we're fighting it. I think a lot of times we think, because like the general public operates in this like, I need a strict schedule. I need to, if something's not right, I need to do more to make things better. And I think sometimes something unique to us is that we actually might need to take a break and do less. So exactly what you guys were just talking about earlier, like giving our bodies rest is some of the most important things that we can do, especially when we're having an emotional moment. Our body is trying, like the brain and body work really well together, and they're trying to communicate with you, but we are often taught to just reject it and keep pushing through because we need to go to work the next day, right? But if we have some space to take some time and just relax, don't feel guilty if your body's trying to nap, like it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I also wanted to ask if someone is feeling as though their emotional well-being is not being currently addressed in their workplace, what are some effective methods to addressing this? And Jessica, like you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like I'd like to kind of go into it a little bit more.
If you don't mind, Tara, I would just love to jump back to the last question.
Oh,
like
yeah.
If you're okay with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a few things I really want to add on top of that. I think you guys are, what you said is awesome. For me personally, the way I see it when it comes to emotions is, the first point is, whatever kind of emotion you have, acknowledge it and just release it. Don't be shy. Don't be scared about it. You are only human. We are only human. And emotions are part of yourself. And sometimes it's really okay to just let it go. Of course, there's always a time and a place. I'm just saying that because I guess we all have to be professional. If you're angry and you're in front of a guest, of course, you can't just let it get out, of course. But you can still find a place and a moment where you could do that. You can quickly disappear, going in a place where no one sees you, and just let it out, acknowledge it, take a second, take a deep breath, and just let it out. And I think that's very important. Don't eat yourself out. Don't let everything, don't ignore the signs that your body actually gives you. Allow things to happen. And again, of course, there's a time and place to do it. In addition to that, what I realized is it's very helpful, but I'm so far of being any type of professional in it. But I think sometimes, as Jessica said, we have long shifts. It is exhausting. But just waking up maybe half an hour before when you normally would wake up, and just kind of like finding the first 5 or 10 minutes in your day when you wake up, and just sit down and just try to meditate, which basically just means sitting down and just focusing on your breath and just listening to your body, wherever your mind is actually traveling, whatever kind of sensations that you have in your body, if it is physical or if it's even deeper inside. 5 minutes a day can really bring you so much. It's all about like listening to your body, and you really start to digest the things that actually happen in your body, and you become just more aware. And that type of awareness is crucial. I'm not saying you have to do it, but it's definitely helpful. And 5 minutes of your day costs nothing. When you look averagely, I guess, we're about 1 hour on social media every single day. 5 minutes of your day, just sitting down and focusing on your breath costs nothing. But what it gives you is incredible.
That's an amazing tip. I'm actually gonna use that and that on a daily basis, honestly. I don't do that enough. And I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, that's great. Like I definitely want to try that.
Could I add one more point to Jason's point?
Absolutely.
So outside of what we can do, what establishments can also do is give us the chance to go out to express ourselves if we're frustrated too. Not within the establishment, like, hey, can I take 5 minutes to walk away real quick? Like, it doesn't have to be the smoke break or your actual break. Can the employees get extra breaks where if they need a moment to themselves or there's something going on, are us as the establishment, are we making space for them to have the space to go through what they need to go through outside of them trying to find it in the middle of the hustle and bustle?
Absolutely.
That's so important. You're completely right. It's something that we do where we work, and that's so important. But if someone feels overwhelmed, you have enough bodies, we have enough people that are here during shift. Someone jumps in, cover that person, go away for 5 minutes, go out, have a deep breath, and that's completely okay. We are all humans, and that should be just normal.
Exactly, because I mean, in this line of work, especially when you're, on the floor behind the bar, like forward facing with a lot of guests, there's a lot of different energies that you have to run into. So it's really, especially if it comes to a point where it's just, intense or something's going on, like it's good to step away for a minute just to process or just to kind of calm yourself down. And that is really important those 5 minutes. I mean, it could not matter too much to an employer, but it matters a whole lot just to kind of get yourself back centered emotionally.
Yeah. And it allows that person to feel seen and heard and respected all in the same space by just giving someone 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then on top of that, even if the manager, after they have their moment at the end of the shift, pulls them to the side to talk to them, if they're able to have words or really sit down, be like, hey, I really hope things are better. That future check-in down the line, either after the shift or days later, does make a difference, not only in someone's performance, but also, do I belong here?
completely. And that's the most important feeling that every single human is actually seeking for is, am I in the right place? Do I belong here? Am I respected?
Absolutely. And I think that, the more we really tap into our emotions and what is needed within like this community, it's good to hold, employers and places that we work accountable to make sure that these things are being addressed. Like, are people being respected? Are they actually given the resources and the time that they need to really do a great job? Because, if you have a happy employee, they're going to, be amazing behind that bar on that floor. And it's not only going to make more money for the business, but also them as well. So I think it's super important. And I'm just going to ask one more question before we wrap things up. And we might only have time. We'll make this one quick, but back to actually, let's go ahead just so that we have enough time for Q&As. But I wanted to go down the line and ask if we could just, each panelist just let us know one resource for people who want to learn more on empathy or being emotionally aware or seeking therapy. Can you all just, starting with Dwight, Jessica, then Jason, just give us one resource, and also what's the best way that people can connect with you all personally or with your initiative?
Okay, I'm going to start with the last question first. If anybody would like to connect with me, I have 2 pages. The business page is Get Home Safe Hug'em. The end of is HUGEM. And my personal page is Juice Jones, JUIC, the number 3 Jones. In terms of resources, when it comes to empathy it's a broad subject and it's a learned experience. So when it comes to empathy, it's not as simple as reading a book and now I have an idea what empathy is. Empathy is something that is supposed to be practiced. Empathy, in terms of 2 places you'd be able to get a good resource on empathy or learning about empathy and emotional intelligence, I'd say Psych2Go on YouTube. They do a really good job with breaking down different versions of empathy, the positive, the negatives, how people can use it against you, and what you need to be careful of as someone who becomes empathetic. My guy Kier Gaines on Instagram, he does a great job giving tidbits and advice on what empathy looks like, what responsibility in your relationships with people look like. Outside of that, even on my page, I do shorts from time to time. Last year, I think I dropped about 210 videos on emotional intelligence altogether between anxiety, depression, and emotional intelligence on Instagram. And those would be my best resources. Also, therapy, going to therapy, getting a therapist, because when it comes to empathy, you can be an empathetic person and not be good at the implementation of empathy when it comes to others, which is very easy to miss, because if you don't understand yourself, you're not going to understand what you are giving others or what you may be dealing with as you think, I handled the situation. And it's like, not everything in life needs to be handled. Sometimes things do need to be discussed, and it's okay to agree to disagree and not see eye to eye, but make space for people to hear your point and vice versa, which is just as important as the process itself of learning. Absolutely. And also YouTube, Juice Jones Creates. That's also a good place.
Nice. All right, Jessica?
Yeah, everyone can find me. I think Instagram is probably my most used platform, Jess Pomerantz. In terms of resources, I think when we talk about empathy, we need to start out by having empathy for ourselves. And I know that sounds kind of like duh, but the amount of people that don't have empathy for themselves, I think, is actually pretty a large amount, especially thinking about this industry and how high achieving we tend to be. We put our needs second. I love that example Dwight gave earlier about picking up constant shifts for other people and things like that. So in terms of having empathy for ourselves, Mindfulness is really helpful meditation. A free app that I always use is called Mindfulness Coach. It's actually put on by the VA. So it's like super simple to use and just has tons of quick mindfulness activities on there that are like 5 to 10 minutes. There's longer ones. But like thinking about, what Jason said in terms of having those 5 minutes to start your day, I think that's a really great resource. And then I think in terms of holding empathy for others, we tend to think I think a lot of people tend to think empathy is like saying yes all the time, when really actually setting healthy boundaries is more empathetic. And that can be really challenging and feel really uncomfortable. So a book that I love and highly recommend is written by a local therapist in North Carolina. It's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And it has a lot of really tangible skills in terms of learning how to set healthy boundaries with people around you. It breaks it down into in the workplace, with your loved ones, with your family. And I think that's a really hard skill for a lot of humans to learn, but can be really, really powerful.
Ooh, and Jason.
Awesome. All right, cool. I'm just going to drop this into the chat box. Cool. When it comes to resources, I have a few, there are many things that come together. Obviously, we live in a social media area, so you can find so many things and we follow so many things. But some of my top, my highlights, for example, when it comes to Instagram, I follow Healthy Hospital, which is an incredible organization that really focuses on well-being, health within the hospitality industry. So that's something to definitely check out. Burnt Chef podcast is a podcast from a chef that was, how do you say, burnt. I don't find the word. Anyway, who just had too much of its work, burnout. Thank you very much. Who had a burnout and started a podcast, and he was a chef, an incredible chef, and now he is podcasting incredible other chefs, but also other people within well-being, and that's just worth to listen into it, because the reality is chefs are often a few steps ahead, and they work mostly more than us, and they have often even more issues than we do have. So it's just interesting to listen into that as well. And then last but not least, it's a book. It's called Miracle Morning. And Miracle Morning is all about your miracle morning. So really waking up a little earlier than usual, and just implementing a few steps. It's actually 6 different steps. One of them will be meditating. And you can do that in 6 minutes. So each step in 1 minute, or you can do everything as long as you want to. So I guess up to an hour. And just using that into your morning routine really makes your morning, and then it makes your day. And the more you do this kind of things, the better your life actually becomes. And it's really about simple things. And it's something I'm into since a bit of a while, and it's been life transforming. So it's something I can really, really suggest to every single person. How do you find me? In the chat box as well. We do have all the Instagram hashtags of all of us, not hashtags, but profiles. So you'll find me as Jason Candid, and definitely don't be shy to just drop a message, reach out, ask questions. I'm always here to help. I'm always here to chat, and yeah, I think that's it.
All right, so we have a question, and it's for anybody on the panel here. Can anyone speak to strategies for the emotional labor of hospitality?
I'd love to jump in if you guys don't mind. So I think that this is a tough one, because a lot of this is the construction of our industry in general, right? We know that a lot of this is structural. And so I don't want to disregard any of that when I give this kind of very general answer. But in terms of you as an individual, I think a lot of the skills and ideas we've talked about today can help build up that kind of resilience to holding a little bit more emotional labor. I tend to use an analogy of think of us like a hole, and if you keep refilling your hole with sand every day, waking up, doing your meditation or mindfulness, taking care of your body, listening to what your body needs, that hole will be a lot stronger. But then if like the emotional labor is like a rainstorm and it keeps pounding down and washing it out, your hole is going to get a lot deeper and then holds a lot more water. So you want to try and keep refilling it by doing healthy behaviors and healthy, activities that fuel you. And again, not to disregard that the structures of this industry are emotionally laborsome and taxing. And there's a lot of room to grow from an organizational and managerial standpoint. And I don't want to ever disregard all of that because that's really hard. But there's just like making those tiny changes, I think, can be helpful. And I know that a lot of people tend to roll their eyes and be like, that's not fair to put all of that on us, but we can only make changes for ourselves and for the people. Like we can only do what we can do. And whether that's activism or advocacy, we can do all those things, but we can't change a structure overnight. So just making those tiny steps one day at a time, I think, is a little bit helpful. There's no magic solution though.
I think to add on to your point, something that we underuse quite often in the industry, the power of an email. Outside of having conversations with not just managers, but your coworkers, emails are one of the only places where your opinions can be said on a situation where it's documented naturally and legally, and you're letting people know, A, I'm comfortable with this, B, I'm not comfortable with this. So let's say you're someone who doesn't have a strong voice within the industry or your workplace. Words can always be read, no matter who you are. In a manager position, you have to read an email from a coworker and vice versa. And that's a strategy in and of itself, because if something is repetitive and you're still showing up to work and you're doing a good job, but you are voicing your issues, whether out loud or an email, they do have to be acknowledged. And as someone who works, it's, as Jessica said, it's up to you to enforce those boundaries. It may be hard, it may be uncomfortable, but no still means no at the end of the day. And if something is too much, you'd be better off voicing that this is too much to someone versus dealing with it, and then it affects your performance or the establishment itself.
Very good
And
point.
I think there was another person, I'm sorry, Jason. I think there was another person who was talking about journaling, but I'm going to get to that after Jason.
I think if you look at that question, I think in general, I'm just a fan of humanity, and that's why we are here today. So it's all about bringing humanity back to hospitality. And I think the right people that really can bring humanity back to hospitality are our leaders. So managers, owners, etc. So I think your direct manager should really start to implement having a bit more chats with every single individual. This can be, as an example, it depends on the size of a business, by the way, but this can be on a monthly basis, 2-month basis, 3-month basis. This is already great. There are places where I've been working where you don't have a chat, except if you really ask for it. But normally, when you really ask for a chat, it's often already a bit late. So why is not the manager making that step actually towards you and saying, all right, this is what we implement every 3 months or whatever. I want to have a chat with every single person in my team. And first of all, I want to ask you, how are you? How are you? What's going on? How do you feel? Because first of all, it's about being human, but also these questions would also affect the performance of their people. So in the end of the day, it's in the same interest of any business. Let's be honest, that's the reality of things. And as a manager, you also have to consider the business, otherwise you wouldn't be the manager. So it's kind of both in one. And I think that's really important. Be human and have these chats and find out how people really are and find out what can you do. And if you hear more than once things that maybe like concerns that people mention, then you can find, a global solution. And if you just hear something from one person, then you can maybe just tailor their experience and their time more to that individual. But again, it's all about being human.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for their time today. I know we weren't able to get to all the questions, but if you all want to reach out to any of the panelists via Instagram, email, or any of the platforms that they had talked about earlier, please feel free. I hope that everybody got some really important tips and was able to take something away from the conversation today. Again, I want to thank Bacardi, Tales the Cocktail, and Focus on Health today for making this happen. Again, my name is Tara Marshall, and thank you for everybody's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right, well, everybody have a great rest of your day, and thank you all for listening. See ya.